I'm sitting in El Dorado International Airport in Bogotá with one suitcase and a backpack. Gate 47. My flight to Miami boards in 20 minutes. The ticket cost me almost everything I had left. In my bank account right now, there's exactly $1,847. 2 years ago, I landed at this same airport with $95,000 and a plan to start over. I bought a mountain ranch. I met someone. I thought I was building a new life. Instead, I was signing away the old one piece by piece until there was nothing left to sign. My name is David. I'm 62 years old, and this is the story of how I lost everything in the Colombian mountains because I confused loneliness with love and trust with stupidity. Let me go back to where this actually started. Seattle, March 2022. My wife Karen died after an 18-month fight with pancreatic cancer. We'd been married 34 years. No kids, just us. She was my entire world. When she passed, I didn't know what to do with myself. The house felt too big. Every room had a memory I couldn't face. Friends tried to help, but their pity made it worse. I'd catch them looking at me like I was already gone too. I was 60 years old, a recently retired civil engineer, and I had no idea what the rest of my life was supposed to look like. The first few months were a blur. I went through the motions, paid bills, maintained the house, avoided phone calls. But I wasn't living. I was just waiting for something to change. Then one night I was scrolling through YouTube and came across a video about Americans retiring abroad. Colombia kept coming up. Lower cost of living, beautiful weather, mountains, coffee farms. The comments were full of people my age talking about how they'd found peace there after divorce or loss. That's when the idea took hold. I started researching obsessively. Medellin, Bogotá, the coffee region. But what kept pulling me back were the small mountain towns. Places like Salento, Manizales, Finlandia, quiet, scenic, far from the noise. I wasn't looking for nightlife or adventure. I wanted isolation in the best possible way. A place to reset, maybe grow something, maybe just sit on a porch and read books I'd been meaning to read for 30 years. By June, I'd made the decision. I was going to sell the house and move to Colombia. My sister thought I was having a breakdown. She kept saying things like, "You don't even speak Spanish, and what if something happens to you down there?" But I didn't care. Staying in Seattle felt like suffocating. I needed to go somewhere Karen had never been, somewhere I could be someone other than the widower everyone felt sorry for. I sold the house in August, got $280,000 for it. After paying off the mortgage and settling debts, I walked away with about $175,000. I put $80,000 in a retirement account I wouldn't touch. The rest I kept liquid. I figured I'd need about $90,000 to $100,000 to buy land and build something simple. The remaining funds would be my safety net. I flew to Colombia in October 2022. One-way ticket, 2 suitcases, a carry-on with my laptop and documents. I booked an Airbnb in a town called Finlandia for 2 weeks while I got my bearings. The plan was to explore the area, find property, and figure out the logistics of actually living there. When I landed in Pereira and drove up into the mountains, something inside me loosened. The air was cool. The views were endless. Green hills, coffee plantations, small colorful towns that looked like they hadn't changed in 50 years. For the first time since Karen died, I felt like I could breathe. I spent those first 2 weeks visiting properties with a local real estate agent I'd found online. Most of what I saw didn't feel right. Too remote, too rundown, too expensive. But then he showed me a place about 20 minutes outside Finlandia, 7 hectares, small main house, a barn, a stream running through the property. The house needed work, but the land was perfect, quiet, private. The kind of place where you could disappear if you wanted to. The asking price was $110,000. I offered 95. They accepted. I wired the money from my US account a week later. The first thing I learned was that buying property in Colombia as a foreigner is complicated. You can own land, but the paperwork is dense. Notaries, lawyers, title verification, currency declarations. I hired an English-speaking attorney in Pereira who walked me through every step. He was professional, thorough, seemed legitimate. The whole process took about 6 weeks. By early December, the property was officially mine. I moved in with almost nothing. A mattress, a folding table, 2 chairs. I didn't care. I was there to simplify, to strip my life down to the essentials and figure out what I actually needed. The first month was exactly what I'd hoped for. I woke up to birds, drank coffee on the porch, spent my days clearing brush, fixing the fence, learning how things worked. I hired a local handyman named Esteban to help with the bigger projects. He didn't speak much English, but we communicated through gestures and Google Translate. It was slow, quiet, simple, and for the first time in a year, I wasn't thinking about Karen every minute of the day. That's when I met Claudia. She lived about a kilometer down the road with her mother and her 2 teenage kids, 16 and 14. Her husband had died in a motorcycle accident 3 years earlier. She worked part-time at a small tourist shop in Finlandia, selling handicrafts and coffee. The first time we met was at the property line. One of my goats had gotten loose and wandered onto her land. She walked it back smiling and introduced herself in broken English. I apologized. She waved it off, said it happens all the time. We talked for maybe 10 minutes. She asked where I was from. I told her Seattle. She said she'd never been to the United States, but her cousin lived in New Jersey. It was a nothing conversation, but it felt good to talk to someone. Over the next few weeks, we'd see each other occasionally. She'd wave from the road. I'd wave back. Sometimes she'd stop by with fresh bread her mother had made. I'd offer coffee. She'd stay for a few minutes, then leave. It was casual, neighborly, nothing more. But slowly it became more. She started asking if I needed help with anything. Translation, errands in town, dealing with utility companies. At first I declined. I didn't want to impose. But when my internet setup became a nightmare of Colombian bureaucracy, she insisted. Spent an entire afternoon on the phone with the provider, switching between Spanish and English, making sure I understood everything. When it was finally working, she refused payment. Said neighbors help each other here. That's just how it is. I was grateful. More than that, I was relieved. Living alone in a foreign country is harder than people think. Not just the language, but the systems, the culture, the unspoken rules. Having someone who could bridge that gap made everything easier. By February, we were spending time together regularly. She'd come by after work. I'd cook dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta or grilled chicken. We'd sit on the porch and talk. She told me about her life, growing up in the mountains, her marriage, the accident that killed her husband, the struggle to raise 2 kids alone while working part-time. I told her about Karen, about Seattle, about why I'd come here. I should have seen it then, but I didn't want to. There were small things, little requests that didn't feel like requests. Her daughter needed help with English homework. Could I tutor her once a week? Of course, I said. Her son's bicycle broke. Could I lend her money to fix it? It was only 40,000 pesos, about $10. I handed it over. Her mother needed medication. The pharmacy in town was expensive. Could I drive her to Pereira, where it was cheaper? I spent half a day doing it. None of it felt wrong. It felt like being useful, like being needed, and I was lonely enough to confuse the two. By April, we were together. Not officially. We never had a conversation about it. It just happened. She stayed over one night, then another. By May, she was spending more time at my place than hers. Her kids would come by on weekends. We'd make lunch together. It felt like family, or at least what I remembered family feeling like. I started thinking maybe this was what starting over actually looked like. Not isolation, not running away, but finding connection in a place I never expected. That's when the property issue came up. We were sitting on the porch one evening in June. She was quiet. I asked what was wrong. She said she'd been thinking about us, about the future. She wanted to know if this was real, if I was serious. I told her I was. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She said, "There's something that worries me. In Colombia, people talk, especially in small towns. People see a foreign man with a local woman, and they make assumptions. They think it's temporary. They think you'll leave." I told her I wasn't going anywhere. She said, "I know, but there's no security for me. If something happens to you, if you get sick, if you go back to the United States, I have nothing." I asked what she meant. She said, "The property. It's yours. Legally, I don't exist here. If we're going to build a life together, I need to know I'm protected, that my kids are protected." I should have stopped right there. Should have said, "Let's talk to a lawyer. Let's figure this out the right way." But I didn't, because I understood what she was saying, or I thought I did. She wasn't asking for money. She was asking for commitment, for proof that I saw a future with her. And I did. I really did. So I said, "What if we got married?" She looked at me, said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yes. If that's what it takes for you to feel secure, then let's do it." She cried, kissed me, said she'd never expected this. We got married in August 2023. Small ceremony at the notary's office in Pereira. Her mother and kids were there. Esteban came as a witness. We had lunch afterward at a local restaurant. It wasn't romantic. It was practical. But that was fine. I wasn't looking for romance. I was looking for stability, for someone to share this life with. And I thought I'd found it. A month later, Claudia brought up the property again. She said, "Now that we're married, we should make things official. Transfer the property into both our names. That way, if something happens to me, she and the kids are protected." It made sense. We were married. Under Colombian law, we were building a life together. I called my attorney. He explained the process, said it was straightforward, but asked if I was sure. I said yes. He prepared the documents. I signed them. In September 2023, the ranch was transferred into Claudia's name. Not joint ownership, full ownership. She explained it was easier this way for tax purposes, that as my spouse, I'd still have full rights to the property. My attorney raised concerns, but I overruled him. I trusted her. We were married. This was our home. For a few months, everything was fine, better than fine. We settled into a routine. She managed the house. I worked on the land. Her kids came by more often, started calling me David instead of Senor. It felt real. But then small things started to shift. She became less interested in my projects, stopped asking how my day went, started spending more time in town. When I asked why, she said her mother needed help, or she had errands, or she needed space. I didn't push. Marriage is complicated. People need room to breathe. But I noticed she was on her phone more, taking calls outside, leaving for hours without explanation. When I brought it up, she said I was being paranoid, that I didn't understand Colombian culture, that families here are close, and she had responsibilities I couldn't comprehend. By December, things had gotten worse. We barely talked. She slept in the guest room, said she needed time to think. I asked what was wrong. She said she wasn't sure this was working, that maybe we'd moved too fast, that the cultural differences were bigger than she'd thought. I asked if there was someone else. She said no, but she wouldn't look at me when she said it. On Christmas Eve, I tried to talk to her, suggested we go to counseling. She laughed, said counseling is for rich Americans. This is Colombia. People don't fix marriages, they just move on. I asked what that meant. She said maybe we made a mistake, that maybe this was never going to work. I felt my chest tighten, asked if she wanted a divorce. She shrugged, said maybe. 3 days later, I came home from town, and the locks were changed. My clothes were in garbage bags on the porch. I knocked, no answer. I called her phone, straight to voicemail. I sat there for an hour, trying to understand what was happening. Finally, her brother showed up, said Claudia didn't want to see me, that she'd filed for separation, that I needed to leave. I said, "This is my house." He laughed, said, "No, it's not. It's in her name. Check the papers." I went to my attorney, showed him everything. He looked at the documents and shook his head, said I'd made a critical error. Under Colombian law, the property was now solely in Claudia's name. As her spouse, I'd have to file a claim for equitable distribution, but it would take months, maybe years. And even then, the courts tend to favor the party whose name is on the title, especially if they can prove the other party voluntarily transferred ownership. I asked what my options were. He said very few. You gave her the property. You signed the papers. You can fight it, but you'll lose. I tried everything. Went to the police. They said it was a civil matter. Went to the consulate. They said they couldn't get involved in private property disputes. Hired a second attorney. She said the same thing. You transferred the property voluntarily. You have no legal claim. The marriage was real under law, so any attempt to claim fraud would be nearly impossible to prove. By February, I'd spent $12,000 on legal fees and gotten nowhere. Claudia filed for divorce. I didn't contest it. What was the point? The property was gone. The marriage was over. All I had left was the money in my bank account and the clothes on my back. I stayed in Colombia for another month, stayed at a cheap hostel in Pereira, tried to figure out my next move. I thought about starting over, buying something smaller, but I couldn't. The whole thing had broken something in me. Every time I walked through town, I felt like everyone knew. The stupid American who gave away his ranch, who trusted someone he'd known for less than a year, who signed papers without thinking. I couldn't face it. One morning I woke up and bought a one-way ticket to Miami. Sold the few things I had left. A laptop, a watch Karen had given me, a camera I'd brought from Seattle. Got about $800 for everything. Added it to what I had in the bank. $1,847. That's what I had left from $95,000. So here I am, gate 47, Bogotá, waiting to board a flight back to a country I'm not sure I belong in anymore. I don't have a plan, no place to stay. My sister offered her guest room, but the thought of explaining this to her makes me want to disappear. I keep replaying the moment I signed those transfer papers, the attorney asking if I was sure, me saying yes without hesitation. I thought I was being generous, trusting, building something. I didn't realize I was giving away the only leverage I had. The worst part isn't the money. It's the fact that I saw the signs and ignored them. The small requests that got bigger, the shift in tone, the distance. I told myself it was culture shock, adjustment, but it wasn't. It was calculation, and I was too lonely to see it. I don't hate Claudia. That's the strange part. I don't even think she set out to hurt me. I think she saw an opportunity. A lonely American with money and no family. Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. Someone desperate enough to believe that marriage meant security instead of risk. And I gave her exactly what she needed. The property, the papers, the legal foundation to cut me out completely. Maybe she planned it from the beginning. Maybe it evolved. I'll never know. And it doesn't matter. The result is the same. They're calling my flight now. Zone 3. I'm walking toward the gate with a suitcase that weighs almost nothing and a future that weighs everything. When I land in Miami, I'll have to figure out what starting over actually looks like when you're 62 and broke and have nothing left to build with. I thought Colombia was my second chance. It wasn't. It was the place where I learnt that trust without boundaries is just another word for surrender. And once you've surrendered everything, there's no negotiating your way back. If you're watching this and thinking about doing something similar, just remember this. Loneliness makes you reckless. It makes you mistake attention for affection. It makes you sign papers you shouldn't sign and trust people you don't really know. I'm not saying don't move abroad. I'm not saying don't fall in love. I'm saying don't confuse the two with safety. Because the moment you put everything in someone else's name, you're not building a partnership. You're building an exit strategy for someone else. And when they take it, you'll be standing exactly where I am now. Gate 47. One suitcase, $1,800. Wondering how you got here and whether you'll ever stop wondering.